Hey, welcome to Bloop. My name's Laura. This is Rebecca. Welcome to this podcast where we talk about all things books. Some of it, hopefully all of it, you can relate to and enjoy the discussion. Sometimes we talk about things that might be a little bit, what's the word, Rebecca?
Risque.
Risque, but I don't want to call it controversial either, but obviously, not everybody has the same opinions. And so, these are just our opinions. Our opinions are our own. And so we're just looking for respectful discourse. So feel free to leave messages, questions, just comments in the comment section or email us. And we'd be happy to get back to you right away. So
yes.
We are going to continue where we left off last week, which is discussing All Things Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. Last week we kind of started off by discussing our content ratings and our spice level ratings that we developed that we hope will start becoming more commonplace amongst books, amongst authors using these on their books to help readers gauge whether or not their content is for them, and also to help authors with getting reviews that are more relevant to them. I talked about last week how, as an author myself, sometimes people read your work and it's not for them. And instead of understanding that and reviewing the work as is, they'll either DNF, which is fine, which is appropriate, or they want to bash you.
DNF means did not finish.
Did not finish. But a lot of times, and this hasn't happened to me yet, but I have seen other authors where people bash their work, and it basically comes down to the content just wasn't for them.
Yes.
And I feel like if we have content ratings, then that could help readers avoid such negative reviews that are really out of their hands because, you're authors. You write the story you want to write.
Yes.
So you write the story you want to read as well. So that was last week. We got a little bit into discussion about the book. It was a lot of hard themes and hard things to talk about. But hopefully, I think from this point, we start seeing kind of a movement towards hope and redemption and all that. So last week was a little bit difficult and hard and darker as this story. But then, like God's promises, you won't always stay in the dark.
Right.
So Rebecca's going to take it from here.
Well, I just wanted to give a couple of really cool fun facts about Francine Rivers. We looked some things up. We listened to about a 15-minute interview with Francine Rivers on Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey.
Mm-hmm.
And
from January, right?
Yeah. So she talked about how, she used to be a romance writer and then she became a Christian when she was about in her 30s. And this was the first book she wrote as a Christian.
Which is amazing.
She's obviously a very talented writer. And although her personal story doesn't relate to Angel's and the fact that she went exactly through what Angel went through, but she felt like she was always chasing.
Here,
what did she say?
There you go.
Yeah, I just want to read it. I lost my place. What did she say? She was always running to something else for answers rather than running to God.
And the stubbornness, right?
And and she was super stubborn. In just the way that she felt. I mean, I think we all can relate to the stubbornness. Even when I think I'm not being stubborn, I'm being quite stubborn. Ask my husband.
I actually think, and did I talk about this with you earlier? So what sometimes is construed as stubbornness from women too. I listened to a little bit, or you're on TikTok or here and there, and I catch bites of stuff, right? Because TikTok, I think 3 minutes is max. And it was Jordan Peterson talking about women when they enter puberty, they all of a sudden become more negative. I wasn't talking about this with you. I was talking about this with another friend.
Because I'm no.
Okay, so we have more negative thoughts. And I was like, excuse me? What?
Your response was negative?
Yeah, my response was like, how dare you, right? And then, but he explained, and he said, we, with our environment and who we are, we notice that, men are naturally built bigger, stronger for the most part. Obviously, there's always outliers and there's whatever, but on average, men are taller and stronger than women. They're just built that way, right? Not dissing us ladies, believe me. I lift in the gym.
That's kind of controversial to say
strong,
this day and age,
You can be strong, but typically, so what that does to our psyche is now we can perceive a bunch of threats. So like he was saying, I don't.
We
even
have
want to
intuition.
misquote.
We have
we
intuition.
have intuition, and everything is like protection.
Do we have bigger brains? Is that what you're saying?
Have what?
Bigger brains. They might have a bigger stature, but we have bigger brains.
Yeah, we just we can perceive threats, and we're aware of all of these threats, and then when we have kids and stuff, you hear like the whole mama bear is coming out. Well, she is, because it's like we foresee every possible threat and thing that can happen. Have you ever fought with your spouse and be like, come on, speed up a little bit. She was gonna fall, like, did you not see that? And it's like, no, I didn't see that. You didn't see that dish in the sink that could have come crashing down? No,
right.
I'm just joking, but I got a little bit, I'm sorry, got a little bit voiceful right there, but I thought it was very interesting that he said that because women are like, oh, she's so negative, oh, she's so this, or we get a lot of like a bad rap, but subconsciously we have this in our head all the time. So that was a very long way of saying, like, so we can foresee ourselves as like stubborn, and I can see how that could be hard and kind of get in the way because I've got to protect, I've got to do this, I got to do that. And it's like to let that go and give your trust to God is like a whole another level.
Yeah, because most of us have trust issues. Most of us do. We've developed them over time.
Everybody. There's not one person who's walked this earth who does not have a story or some sort of baggage that they currently carry or once carried.
Exactly. So for Francine, she was saying that she was just so stubborn and our marriage was collapsing. And she ended up going towards self-help books and all of that to try to like
how to do this,
fix
me.
It's funny you should mention Jordan Peterson because I was listening to something by Jordan Peterson and he has this new marriage podcast out. It's like 3 episodes and I was listening to it and he said self-help is like a really stupid phrase. Like it's just stupid because we can't be 100% of the problem and 100% of the solution. And although we're going to these self-help books for wisdom and what have you found, we essentially most of the time we're looking within ourselves to fix ourselves, and that's not doable.
Sometimes
it's
we
not
need others. Yeah.
Yes. So the ultimate healer is God for sure, and that's what we believe. Even though if you continue to listen to us, you'll hear us talk about things that are not faith-based, but I mean...
Right. So as from what we've shared, obviously where our faith lies and our beliefs to some extent, but the bloop isn't going to only be Christian fiction.
Right. And this isn't a Bible study.
Yeah,
but
right.
We do have
just so
morals
happens.
About us that we do believe, and it just so happens that we agree. We agree with the principles mentioned in this book.
Yeah. You may not, and that's
fine. We hope that you still
let's have
get
a
something
civil,
out. Yeah,
civil discussion
for sure.
about it.
Another thing I think that you were telling me about. So she became a Christian and she just found joy in God, and she connected with Angel because of, again, with the stubbornness and just what Angel had gone through, always trying to find happiness somewhere, but she couldn't, chasing answers from something else other than God. And I think that Angel had just ultimately given up.
I like this part.
What does it say? Oh, some of the worst things are turned to joy and it's miraculous. Yes.
Yeah, that's what she quoted saying, yeah.
For sure. And the Bible does promise that he will turn everything around for the good. So all the bad that you've been through in your life, he'll turn it around and make it good. And I know that he's done that in my life. So I just smashed my microphone.
Oh, that was so good, his laugh. You can't hear him laugh, but it's a good laugh. Okay. No, No, leave it on. That's great. That's great. So this is really important, and I'm glad we found that, because it's like, how can you write this? I mean, we talked about last week how it was really dark. There's a lot of things that were so difficult.
And I don't think we even touched on all the
We didn't touch on all of it, because, and like you said, it goes from like worse to worse.
Or that's not even a word.
It's not a word, but it just fits.
It is a train wreck of like heart-wrenching proportions. It's awful.
The unimaginable, the unfathomable. How, I mean, she tried to provoke somebody into taking her life, which we didn't discuss that at this point.
She really wanted to die. She just wanted to die.
For Francine Rivers to understand that concept that the Lord gives us of like the promise of joy and everlasting peace, and how can we turn something? So I'm like, when I read this the first time, I was like, how was she going to turn this around? Because I'm having a hard time seeing how God, I was newer in my faith when I read this too. So I was a newbie Christian when I first read this, and I was like, how? I had questions that came up, but this isn't a Bible study. But if you had that question too, feel free to. My question was, how could he allow it? How could that happen to little sweet angel baby girls and
boys? I think that's often the question that a lot of people ask, like, how can God allow awful things to happen
and we're
to
not gonna delve into that, but I just want you to know you're not alone.
If this is a common question.
If this was your first time reading this, if you find yourself as a new Christian, because it's not a Bible study, Ron. Gosh. Because I like to go through and make sure that my my theology is sound and that I say the right things. I'm not prepared to speak on the word. I have opinions, but I want to make sure I'm theologically sound.
What I say to people when people ask about why God allows bad things to happen is I always say that, we were made with free will. People have free will.
Yeah, I get all of that. I get all, like I said, I don't know.
The free will comes and people get to make their own decisions.
It's free will. We live in a fallen world.
Yes. So God allows bad things to happen, but
He doesn't cause it.
He doesn't cause them, and he can turn all of the bad stuff around, just like he did with Angel. Ultimately, she ended up helping these women. She ended up saving these little girls that were stuck in this house with Duke, and she ended up creating
his next victim.
Yes, and she ended up creating a school and place for women that wanted to get out of this life, kind of like a little refugee place where they learned actual skills. Because back then in the 1800s, a lot of women weren't able to go out and get just a regular job anywhere.
And that was really important that she knew to do that, and that Francine recognized that, because a lot of times we see charities.
Right.
Well, what happens when that money stops?
Exactly.
That person is still left in the same situation. I'm not bashing on charity by any means, but there's such a difference between charity and building somebody up, providing them the tools necessary to continue to be successful after the help is taken away.
Right. There's a difference in a hand up than a hand out.
Yes.
So the fact that she created a school to help these women learn a skill. They got schooling if they needed it. They learned how to sew. They learned how to cook.
To read and write.
Yes, because they didn't know how to do any of that. Most of them had been laying on their backs for a living for however long, and kept
under somebody's thumb. And so it's like, you can't leave.
They had pimps. They had people that would come for them.
You won't survive. How will you make money? How will you take care of yourself?
Right.
It's like the enemy in your ear all the time.
Well, and it's psychological, too. It's a psychological battle of going, what am I ever going to be good at? I'm never going to be able to good at, because I got to put food on the table. I got to eat, I can't be left alone, because if I leave this brothel, these men are going to rape me, or they're going to hurt me, or they're going to because now I don't have protection. So women are constantly thinking about security and protection and all that stuff. So taking somebody like these girls out of that, and then already having the reputation of being a prostitute, will make them very vulnerable outside of that security, even though it's like the worst thing ever. But thank God that there was a place for these girls to be able to ultimately go to find help to get out of it. Otherwise, they would have just stayed and done. And who could blame them, honestly? Who could blame one day turns into 2, turns into 2 years, turns into 5 years, turns into now they're dead. You know, I mean, it's just the way that it works.
Hold on, go back to the.
Oh, what
Okay, so
we were going to talk about this.
We're going to come back here. So one of the things I also found interesting with Francine Rivers, and she said she didn't totally, like, Angel wasn't totally created based off of her, right? But she said she could relate to her. And one of the other ways, besides the stubbornness and her unwillingness and how long it took her to, like, give it all to God and then experience that humility and then finally that joy, was that she talked about very openly the abortion she had in college. And in this book, you see it's mentioned that Angel had already had one, and that Duke, gosh, it was so difficult. He forced another one on her, and he's like, I told you to take protections the first time. This time won't be as pleasant. And so, like, he made it so it physically harmed her enough so she would never be able to have children again. But it's interesting that she wrote an experience of abortion because Francine Rivers talked about how she had one in college, and a book that she wrote called The Atonement Child, which I know I've read. I know you said you haven't read yet.
I haven't read it.
She wrote that book, The Atonement Child, because after 20 plus years, she was still struggled with her abortion. And then through writing characters, and I've experienced this with writing my own novels, that, you know, you don't base characters off of you, but sometimes what those characters go through in their experience, it's like healing to you. I actually was seeing my naturopath, or my applied kinesiologist, and after writing book 2 in my trilogy, and him being like, what's going on? Your body's so stressed and tense and all that. I'm like, oh, nothing. I've just been writing. He's like, I feel like it's emotion based and all that. And I was like, well, you know, not me, but my character, you know, she had real emotional. He's like, he had to teach me how to, like, let my body know. Like, he's like, your brain knows that, like, it's not you going through it, but your body's feeling it.
Right.
And you have to, like, let that go. After you're done writing, you have to, like, let that go. So I really resonated. I don't know, he's getting political here. But I really related to her finding her redemption and her healing through writing and writing her next book. And also, you know, she introduced it here with her first book with Angel. And, you know, I think that was part of it.
This book is also based on the Bible, the Bible story that's in Hosea.
Right.
Hosea and Gomer, I think, is his wife's name.
So this I think stirred it. So she said that through writing these characters and having one person that is really seeking God's perspective out of all the different opinions the characters had, she received healing from the book. So I thought that was really good. So I guess if you haven't picked up and you haven't read it yet, some of the main themes or ideas that you'll really get to, like, live out and experience is letting go of shame, surrendering, giving your all to God, not having idols in other people. We will talk about that or see that when Angel leaves Michael the second time and God speaks to Michael. Living in freedom and finding joy, how the fact that we're clean in God's eyes, even though we're not perfect. And we are in a fallen world, and we have, you know, everybody has choices, but God, you know, he's already forgiven us. And then the notion of guilt versus conviction.
Yes.
So those are themes you can kind of be prepared for when you read this book.
So now we're going to go and we're going to try. This is going to be really hard for Laura and I because we could talk forever. But we're going to try to do some rapid fire questions and try to get through these questions fast in order to allow, you know, for time purposes only.
Because we have a ton of questions.
Because we have tons of questions.
And we still got to discuss the movie.
Yes. We still got to get there at some point.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So.
Okay. So. You can do that one.
But we're asking that one at the end.
No, number 8.
Oh, number 8. Okay. Why did Angel's mother stay in a relationship that was damaging to both her and her daughter? what kept her there. Okay.
I'm gonna let her take this one for sure.
So you want me to answer the question?
Yes, just answer it.
But I can't rapid fire this question.
You're gonna have to do your best.
Okay, so why did Angel's mother stay in a relationship that was damaging both to her and her daughter? Because she felt like she had no other option. Angel's mother, you'll find, came from a family that didn't agree with this relationship that she had with Alex. Is that his name?
Alex.
Yeah, they didn't agree, so they basically cut her off. And then she goes on to have a child out of wedlock with this Alex guy that's married with a family and all that stuff, which we covered in the last
episode. And I'm sure
episode.
it didn't say it, but I'm sure he was feeding her the trope of, I'm going to leave my wife.
I mean,
we're getting divorced.
Right. And so she felt she loved him. She loved Alex, and she was hoping that he was telling her the truth, which we know, like, normally that's not a true statement. So when he actually does cut her off, because he didn't want anything to do with Angel, Sarah, then she felt like she was, well, that's a whole nother question. I guess I can't say that. But, yeah, her family and friends disowned her. And so she made the choice to be with Alex. And back then, the reason why I think that Angel's mom gets into prostitution is because back then there wasn't a whole, like I've said before, there wasn't a whole lot of ways that women made money. If you didn't know
Their skill set was basically being trained up to be a wife.
If you weren't a teacher, or if you weren't, I don't know, if
a farmer's wife,
then you were kind of messed up. So she kind of, I personally think, it's not really stated in the book, but Angel's mother went and started pawning off all the things that Alex gave her, all the things that were worth money. And then when that ran out, she didn't have a choice. And I kind of think that she did it once. She prostituted herself one time. And then I feel like it might have grown into this snowball effect. And she just was like, okay, well, that was easy. I can do it again. And it just kind of went downhill, and she found herself, and this is what she was after that. So that's what I think.
Yeah.
You're the next question.
Okay, so what I guess we could say we see for the majority of the book, Angel's like fighting Michael, right? She's fighting him. He's starting to like thaw the ice around her heart. The wall is starting to come down that she'd built to protect herself. And it's kind of like, when did that change happen for her? When did she start loving Michael instead of fighting him? And viewing him as somebody who has control over her, or who could use things against her or hurt her. Because she had been taught and trained her whole life that people will use and abuse you. And that's all that they'll ever do. Nobody can do and love you. So I feel like when the Altmans showed up and Michael stayed true to who he was, he literally gave them his house and moved to the barn with Angel. And she was like, what the heck? It's like, and she flat out told the Altmans, like, I wouldn't have stopped for you. They were broken down on the road, and Michael's like, we're stopping for them and like help them. And Angel was like, I wouldn't have stopped for you. But but you know that. And so I think seeing how loving he was to all those people and the respect that he commanded from them through that, and just the way people constantly talked about him. And it's that principle, I think, of like action over words. Like his actions definitely, he said what he said, and he would do what he said he was going to do. Like, so he was, but I mean, I think her just watching she was very observant and just kind of observed and didn't want to be attention, and just seeing him with these other people and these other families and just being himself. I think that's, to me, when the turning point happened.
For me personally, I think it's a little bit sooner. Granted, her heart had been thawing, but I think that there is a time where Angel leaves. She tries to leave one time and Michael brings her back, but she tries to leave a second time. She actually does. We haven't talked about that yet, where she actually gets, do you want to talk about that yet?
We could talk about it.
Okay. So,
that's before the Altmans, yeah.
Yeah, before the Altmans. Michael, Hosea's brother, shows up. He remembers Angel from her brothel days, and Angel is not secretive about who she is or anything. Paul is the brother's name, and he's disgusted by Angel. He's
Paul.
just disgusted by her. And it tries to tell Michael, do you know what she is? She's a whore, and Michael,
she's not good enough for you.
She's not good enough. I don't want to see your name attached to this person. And Michael's like, she's my wife, and you need to respect her as my wife, and all of that. Well, Angel, she's still in this crazy thinking. She decides, I got to go back to what I know, because I'll never be able to repay Michael for what he's done for me so far, and I don't want to be owned by anybody. She was in that ownership mentality, thinking that that's all Michael wanted from her.
How much food has he provided me? I'm gonna have to pay him back for all of that. Yeah.
So she immediately tries to go. Well, Paul has got to go to town to get a horse and some other stuff because Michael's given him money. Michael gave this man money. Told him to go buy this and go buy that, and so he's off to the market. So Angel catches up with him and says, "Hey, can I get a ride to town?"
Wait a minute, no, that's Michael rescuing her. You're talking about...
Yeah, I'm talking about how she goes. So she ends up back.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the part where he was like, "Home is this way, your old life is that way."
I'm talking about the second time.
Okay, because you said this when she tried to leave.
Yeah, she tried to leave the first time, and Michael brought her back. The second time, he's leaving.
Well, he didn't bring her. He gave her a choice.
Yeah, he gave her a choice the first time.
He said, whatever Paradise Valley is 30 miles uphill that way, and home is 1 mile downhill this way.
Yes.
I was like...
And so she walked back to him.
Yeah.
But then this time, she actually had a ride to town. So she goes, and I'm not going to get into what happened with Paul, but when Michael ends up going after her this time, and he goes and he finds her, she's prostituting herself back in her old ways.
And the first day.
Yeah, and he goes in there and he grabs her out of there. And she's already feeling kind of bad about what decision she made. So he asks her, "Do you want to stay here?" And she says no. And so he takes her back home. They go back home and all of that. And then he's doing something in the barn. This is where I think it started to change. And she sees him breaking down, crying, like by himself. He doesn't know she's watching her, but he's full on crying and praying and, completely broken about what Angel just did.
It cracked, like it started to thaw.
Yeah, but I think she saw his intention for her. Like, I think she saw that he actually did love her.
I agree.
And that I feel like
it started, but I feel like in terms of a major shift where she started feeling like, I love him. I want him. He deserves better. Like in her mind, she wasn't good enough. And because I love him, I want the best for him.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I need to leave. So that's what I'm talking about as a major shift. Not all the moments that further broke the wall, but major shift.
I think that's when she started to open up to him and started to think of him in a different way.
She still was fighting him a lot at that point.
Oh, she was, yeah.
So for me, the pivotal shift, like I said, was the Altmans, particularly when Elizabeth, the wife of Miss Altman, was really sick and watching her husband, I think his name was John, taking care of her. And she was picturing all the things Michael did for her when she was all beaten up and broken, and how loving and tender. And I think that was a real pivotal moment for her.
Yeah, she was able to see she
was able to see it, yeah, because
she see an actual real relationship in motion.
Yeah, and that's when she started questioning all her what ifs. What if Mama had a man like Jonathan, or I think that's Elizabeth's husband's name, I forget, Mr. Altman. What if Mama had a Mr. Altman? What if, like, all these what ifs started popping up,
right? So, and she had always been told, like, by the nanny, or not the nanny, but the housekeeper, Cleo. Yeah, the men are only after one thing, and once they get it, they're done. And like she was waiting for that other shoe to fall, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this gets into the what did you think when Angel forgave Paul?
I know Michael kept saying to her 70 times 7. 70 times 7.
Yeah, but
And so she was hearing that from God too. But wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say, you know what I would like to say? I think I could forgive. I mean, but you never forget. I don't know if I could do life with him in the way that they are planning on doing life together.
We're told to, or commanded to forgive.
Yeah.
So, because forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for us. It's to set us free. It's not for the other person.
Yeah, I didn't know that the first time I read that. And like I said, I was a newbie Christian. I was like, I don't know about that. I mean, I was like,
Paul said some really awful things and did some awful things.
And he did awful things.
I mean, like, he took advantage of her on the way back to Paradise Falls.
Yeah, he intimidated her, bullied her into having sex with him.
Yes.
As payment for
the ride.
Gracious ride into town. Meanwhile, that was her husband's carriage and cart, horses, money. Right. But, you know, she owes him. Oh.
Yes.
No.
So, I mean.
No, sir.
But she does say the reason, she says, well, how can when Paul finally asks for her forgiveness, she says something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, how could I not forgive you? I forgave you a long time ago. How could I not forgive you because of all the things I've been forgiven for, or something like that. That's what she says. So, she forgave him. Are you looking for it?
I'm looking for it. You keep going.
Well, what am I going to talk about? Well, okay. While you're looking for that.
Yeah, go on to the next one. Sorry, I need to find this.
I know, dead air's no good. Well, you can edit that part for us so that we can splice it together.
Stop it. Keep going.
Do you want me to go to the next question?
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go back to see what it says.
We have been bantering just fine, thank you very much. But she's looking in the book. I don't know. All right. Stop. In the epilogue, Sarah says, I never want to forget where I came from and all God has done for me. Why would this be important? Well, it's also goes into why she forgave Paul. You know, she needs to remember. And even all the things that I've been through in my life, I can say that I wouldn't trade all of the bad and go back and redo anything. I feel like I learned a bunch of things from those lessons in my life, and I would not go back and change anything because of what I learned and the character that was built within me for going through each trial, each horrific thing, each relationship. I think that all of those led to where I am at today, and without those, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So yeah, I thank God for that, and I believe that we should forgive people because we were so freely forgiven for all the things that we've ever done. And what do you think? Do you agree with me?
Yeah. Well, of course. I think it's just remembering where you came from so that you don't continue to fall back into your sin and your old ways.
So you don't make the same mistakes over again.
Yep, and also to just be continuously grateful and thankful for what
you have. To stay humble.
Because sometimes, like your life situation gets, you're up in one of those, like I said, remember life, goes ups and downs. And when you're in a real highs, it's like you get a little prideful again, or a little bit like, oh, I don't need God so much because, I'm doing great up here. And we rely less. You're going to have to cut that out. I'm going to have to redo that because I think my brow was showing. So, but so you're, how I said, your ups and downs. Sometimes when you're really, in a good moment, you're really at your peak. It's like you tend to need God less. Mm-hmm. How your brain or the enemy likes to trick you. And so you slowly forget about your hard times and, oh, I can do this by myself. See how good I've had it and how good I'm doing by myself. But we all know life is going to continue to ebb and flow up and down. And then when you're down here, it's like, I just feel like your lows won't be so low if you remember what you've already experienced, what you've already overcome, what God has already
done for you,
walked alongside you, and the gifts that he's given you and the knowledge and the wisdom. And so you can be low again, but it won't feel so low.
Oh, and you'll also be able to remember that you weren't alone through that either.
Yeah, exactly.
That you did have somebody.
So it's really important to remember, like,
where you came from.
Yeah. And it keeps your hope alive. And yeah. So
when Michael and Angel helped the Altman family, what did Angel learn about Michael, herself, and God? I think you already talked about that a little bit. I mean, she learned what an actual great relationship looked like that she had never seen before, a husband and wife relationship. She learned what that was like. She learned Michael and his, he was just so generous. He gave them land. He gave them food. First of all, he said, here, take my house. You guys sleep in my house. You guys, and ended up giving them land, I think, too, or did they buy it? I'm not sure.
He gave them his best land. He let them buy it from him, and I'm sure he probably offered it for peanuts.
For nothing.
Yeah. Just because he knew how important it was for fellowship.
Yes.
And to have people you get along with so well who have a similar belief system as you, who are so lovely and encouraging. And I think he mainly did it for Angel because he knew it would devastate her
to lose them. Yeah, because she had really grown very attached to Miriam and the little girl, Ruth, tiny Ruth. Yeah. And she needed some girlfriends, man. She needed that fellowship, like
some
you said.
Healthy friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And girls that, I mean, Angel was always straight up about who she was. She was always kind of like, yeah, I'm a prostitute, so what? She was always waiting for that other shoe to fall with people. She was always waiting for people to just be like so judgmental of her. And these people were not. They just loved her. They didn't flinch at what she said about herself. They didn't flinch when they got to know where Angel had come from. They didn't care. They just continued to love her no matter what. And I think she was kind of like, she was shocked by that. But I think that did her well. She needed that. Where was I? How do you see God's call in Angel's life by this point? What specifically does she discover about herself? I'm going to let you take this because I've taken like the last two.
How do you see God's call in Angel's life by this point? Okay. So I think the biggest turning point for her, God's call has always been in Angel's life. And he started really pursuing her heart with Michael in the brothel. She had taken the steps to run away from Duke. Yes, she was hit down, but her spirit, she still had so much spirit. And then she provoked McGowan, the Duchess's, arm, like her, what's it called?
Security.
Yeah. She provoked him because before he wasn't really allowed to punish her like he wanted because she was the golden child.
She was the golden goose, man. They protected her.
Of that brothel. So she brought in a lot of money. So the Duchess was like, you can't leave marks on her and can't whatever. And Angel was always taunting him with that knowledge. But Angel wanted to end her life and she provoked him and God said no. So he really started pursuing her through Michael. And then we see, he starts like tugging at her heart a little bit with things that Michael would say and share with her and her heartstrings being pulled. But God let her leave after the Altmans came when she fully decided that she loved Michael, but then she couldn't give him children. And she wanted what was truly best for him. So she felt like she was being selfless and I'm going to leave and let them be together because they should really be together. He deserves that. I love him so much. I want to do that for him. And then she leaves and her life goes to the pot again. But I really love there was this moment where Michael was in so much pain that she left him, and he's calling out to God, why? And God's response, what he heard from him was, "You shall have no idols before me." And Michael's like, "What? I don't have any idols before me. Like, what are you talking about?" He's like, "You didn't, but she did." You basically saying, Michael, you became her idol, not me. And you will fail her at some point. Mm-hmm. She will break if you make one misstep, and you're going to because you're human. And she's my child. Let her be. I'm going to handle this. Thank you, good and faithful servant. I've done this. I've got this now. And so we see God really pursue her when she is in a really dark and scared moment. She has utter peace when Duke takes her again. Yeah. And so much so that it unnerves Duke. Like, she hasn't said anything different, but you just know when you're full of the Spirit that the Holy Spirit just kind of takes over. And I thought that was a really pivotal moment where Duke is like trying to threaten her, and she's basically like, "Do your worst."
He's trying to ruffle her feathers.
And she's at complete peace. And then he like shoves her on stage, and it was really cool in that moment to see the Holy Spirit give her words to a song. And as soon as she sings it, forgets all the words, does not know the words anymore. But it calls in another man who's going to give her the hand up, not the hand out, Mr. Axel. She starts the school and all of that, and just the people she meets. He's another believer. She saves other children. Duke, he's gone. Justice is served.
And the town came for him.
The town came for him. And it was really pivotal, but just to see that, where she could hear him so clearly. And at that point, she had to actively decide, will I trust God? She knew he existed at that point. She knew. Do I continue on this path of self-destruction and ignorance and pretending like he doesn't? Or do I walk in hope and faith? And that's was really
And she could have even chose to go home. But
no, I feel like he was like, not yet. But there was so much that she had to learn.
There was so much she had to learn and do, and I think she wanted to be better. She wanted to do something for herself. Finally, she had that opportunity.
Yeah, often when we're able to protect and serve others, we learn and heal we heal ourselves in the service of others. That's what she did.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was cool. That was really cool. I found the Paul apology, and she says, "I forgave you a long time ago, Paul. I left the valley in Michael of my own free will. Don't lay blame for that on yourself." And then she's like, "Let's leave all that behind us. Let's tell me everything that's happened since I left. Especially how a man like you ever managed to win a girl like Miriam." And she was smiling. So that part was a little hard for me. Like, I could totally forgive somebody. And I know she knew how hard her life was, and I think she was empathizing with him a lot after losing his wife and all the pain that he went through. Not that it's an excuse, but I think she empathized with that and was willing to ignore it and move on. I personally, for me, I could forgive him and understand and empathize with that, but I couldn't. I don't think I could do life and be like, just we're going to be neighbors and have family functions together. Let's have Christmas at my house, Easter at yours. No. Weird. I don't know if I could do that. What about you?
Well, I think in her situation, it probably would have been because she's moving from one career path to another. So I think in Paul's mind, he's still seeing her as this trifling hoe, for lack of a better term, and he thinks that she's a user, and he's got all these preconceived notions about who she is.
Yeah, but Rebecca, we don't care about that. What I want to know is if Paul did that to you.
If I was a trifling hoe, and now I'm trying to turn my life
you're
around,
Angel and he's Paul,
right? I'm answering the question.
You better answer this question.
You might not like my answer.
Well, go
ahead. I'm just saying, if I was a trifling hoe, and now I'm and that's all you know me as is a user, in his eyes and Paul's eyes, and now I'm trying to turn my life around, and now I have turned my life around. I've also gotten rid of the demons that are within me, and look, she's done a lot in her life too. So, and you can also see that Paul has done a lot of changing in his life. He was an his wife died. He became an
Yeah,
alcoholic.
I said
like
I can empathize.
he
with
had
all
some
of that.
redemption too. So at some point, you just have to kind of lay your weapons down and go, that's in the past. That's who we were. We're
Yeah.
no longer those people anymore. Those people are dead.
Yeah.
We're these new people. And we are going to just operate in this new existence that we have been given. God says we're no longer guilty. And we're just going to walk in the fact that we are no longer guilty, that we are clean in his eyes, and we've been able to start over.
Yeah.
And I think that if both parties can do that, and there's evidence that they've truly changed, then you can walk in that freedom together in that situation. Like, I know that there's been other situations in life that, you know, maybe one person isn't completely 100% whatever, and you can't trust them. You're not both on the same page together, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that if two people can be on the same page and on the same path towards better, it can happen. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my own marriage. So I know that this is a different kind of scenario with a brother-in-law and Angel. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I could forgive him. I could do it.
No, I said I could forgive him.
I could walk in life, yes.
Okay.
I could totally, if we're both putting our weapons down, we're leaving him at the door, then could totally do it.
Where are we at?
45.
Okay, so that kind of ran over. So we are going to have to stop here. And then next week we'll finish our series on Redeeming Love with discussion of the movie and how, we felt they did, how well we thought that they did, taking this book and bringing it to life on film. Talking about the cast of characters, how true or not true the book was, or the movie was to the book, etc. So we hope you'll join us next week.
Bye.